So this is the OnePlus 3T. This is a little bit of a late review if you're looking for a launch coverage video, but nonetheless I just picked this one up for myself as a replacement for my Moto X Play, and I've been using it for the last couple weeks. I've also gone to Taipei for Computex since I've had it, which is a real stress test for any phone, and I've got to say I'm very impressed. So let's take a look. So first things first, a tour around the device. Obviously when you take it out of the box you get the dash charger and the USB-A to USB-C cable, the dash cable, as well as obviously the phone itself. The phone comes with a screen protector pre-applied, which is amazing, and I wish more phones did this, especially screen protector that you can actually use. Came perfectly applied as well, which is very nice. You obviously, as I said, get the dash charger and the dash charging cable, which a note on that is fantastic. It charges the full 3400 milliamp hour battery, which I'll come on to more later, but it was fantastic for battery life. It charges the entire battery in under 2 hours. I think it's something like 60% in an hour. It really is very, very impressive and very handy for stuff like when I was in Taipei and I only had a short amount of time to get a bit of extra battery life, just to make me feel a little bit more comfortable. On the front of the phone, up the top, you will find the notification LED, which is actually RGB, and you can control in software and in the app itself, depending on what app you're using, what color it turns up on, which is actually really useful. I do quite miss the sort of the screen turning on and showing you what notifications you have available from the Moto X Play, but this is a nice alternative. You also have a front-facing 16 megapixel camera. This is limited to 1080p, and hopefully I'll be showing you some B-roll of some shots that I got from the front-facing camera, specifically me and Josh walking through one of the night markets in Taipei. That is limited to 1080p, even though the back camera is also 60 megapixel, and that one is not limited to 1080p. That one's 4K, 30 Hz I believe, or 30 FPS, but either way it's quite impressive. You also have the main speaker for obviously calls and all that sort of stuff. This one is not used for any audio playback. That is the speaker that is on the bottom of the phone next to the Type-C ports and the all-important headphone jack. I do love the placement of the headphone jack on the bottom next to the Type-C port as well, as it means that when you put the phone in your pocket, it goes in the same way that it does when you're just putting it in normally, at least for me anyway, instead of having it on the top, so that's very nice. Along the sides of the phone, especially on the right hand side, you have the power button and the dual SIM tray. They've chosen dual SIM here over micro SD card and SIM expansion. This is a little bit annoying, but I went for the 128 gig model and I expect that that's not going to be filled up too soon. Of course, there is a 64 gig model as well. On the left hand side, you actually have a 3-position slider. This is for sort of your activity level. So if you want to be in the sort of full volume ring mode, silent mode, or in the sort of vibration or do not disturb mode, then this one is pretty fantastic. I love that you can customize all of this in the settings. The settings app is very well laid out. You've got a load of stuff in there, especially customization for these sorts of things. You can change obviously the different settings for these alarm modes or these sort of call modes, as well as a whole load of other settings for the buttons at the bottom. You can do double tap to switch apps. You can set long press actions, so if you want to do long press the home button for the sort of Google Assistant, or you can double tap the home button to switch between apps, and you can do the same thing with any of the other buttons, including back and forward. You can switch them, make them on screen, so there's a load of customizability available there. Actually, on the note of customizability, when you pull down to the notifications tray at the top, your first swipe down will give you quick toggles, 5 quick toggles that you can change, which is really very nice, and then you can pull down again for the full list of toggles and stuff like that, and you can change these around. You just press the little pencil in the top corner and you can drag new things in, which means you can have multiple pages of sort of quick toggles, or you can remove some so that it's a bit shorter. It's fantastic amount of customizability you have. Back to the hardware, down at the bottom of the front of the device, you obviously have the home button, which is actually a fingerprint sensor. This is awesome. It does a pretty good job. It's pretty fast. There's a bit of false detection in it, especially if I say pick it up out of my pocket and accidentally sort of hold my hand over, or the palm over the fingerprint sensor. It might try and auto detect that, and obviously that's not my fingerprint. There is a limit of 5 fingerprints, which is a little bit troublesome, especially when you're starting to just use the phone. So I've got sort of, I think, these fingers already set up. It would be very nice to have an additional couple, especially for example, if I pass my phone to my partner while I'm driving so that she can set up navigation. I don't want her to have her own account on my phone or anything like that. I just want her to be able to access my phone and open maps and turn on GPS and stuff like that and set up navigation so that we know where we're going. So it'd be nice to have that sort of available and a few more fingerprints so that I can still use any finger I want and she can also access it as well. That'd be a quite nice feature to add. But otherwise it's very nice. You also have two sort of software/hardware buttons on either side that you can actually change, and you can turn off the white LEDs in the software as well. One of the other cool features it does also have is pocket mode. So when you're taking it out of your pocket and it turns the screen on automatically, or you accidentally double tap the screen to wake, which actually there's a whole load of gestures available, and I'll do a piece on that in a second. But point is that if you turn it on by accident in your pocket, if the top sensors are covered, if the IR sensors that detect if it's near your face and that sort of thing detect that there is an obstruction, then it will automatically go into pocket mode and not allow you to do anything until you unobstruct those sensors, which is actually really nice and means that you can't pocket dial or butt dial anyone by accident. On note of the gestures, let's go through them. So first of all, you have double tap to wake and double tap to sleep if you're on the lock screen. Double tap to wake works anywhere. Obviously double tap to sleep only works on the lock screen. You've obviously got the power button to turn it on and off as well. You can also use the fingerprint sensor while the device is on sleep mode or the screen is off to fully unlock the device and go straight to your home screen or whatever app you were last on. You also have a few different ones, so you can flip the phone over if you're having a phone call but you want it to be muted, and of course you can use the slider on the side to change that too. You also have draw a V on the screen to turn on the flashlight. You can draw an O to open the camera, or double tap the power button to open the camera. You also have some music controls, so you can draw an arrow on the screen for next or 2 lines for pause. You've got 3 fingers swiping downwards to take a screenshot, and I think I'm probably missing a few, but there are a whole load and they're on the screen for you now. So yeah, it's a really awesome, very gesture-based phone. Once again, coming back to the hardware, on the back of the phone you have a very nice brushed aluminium finish. Depending on which color of the phone you got, obviously this will determine the overall style, but for me this looks sexy as hell. The camera bump is definitely real here. It's pretty big. It doesn't wobble the phone around much, which is pretty nice, although I would recommend potentially getting a case for it just to level that bump out if nothing else. Although it does feel pretty good in the hand, it doesn't slip around like some of the other metal-backed phones. Now I mentioned the rear camera bump. The actual camera itself is still a 60 megapixel camera, which is really very impressive, f2.0, and it's just a fantastic overall camera, at least for me anyway. Going from the Moto X Play to this is a real bump up in camera quality. The flash is decent enough, although a little bit on the weak side, and the video from the camera is full 2160p or 4K as it's sort of nominally known nowadays, which is actually pretty fantastic. Here is some video footage for you, and I'll also include some audio if I can.
So the catechins will be leaked out when firstly they just collecting these leaves, right? And you just stir in like this one, stir in this one, and also you put your hands just stir it up and down again.
那要搅拌几回，还有搅拌的时间、搅拌的过程、它的力道，这就是经验。
The OnePlus 3T is incredibly responsive. It's currently running Oxygen OS and running Android 7.1.1 and has been confirmed to be getting Android O as an upgrade at a later date, so that's awesome to see that the upgrades are still being rolled out. Overall, because of the Snapdragon 821 and the Adreno 530 GPU and the 6 gigs of RAM, which is insane for how much RAM it has, it's a very responsive phone. It's very enjoyable to use, and I really like it. I cannot recommend it enough in terms of specs and usability. Overall, I'm really impressed with this. The image quality from the pictures and from the video is really very impressive for a phone camera, and considering the actual overall quality you get, as I said, I'm really impressed with it. Some of the features that I'm not so impressed with is the power button placement. This is directly opposed to the volume rocker, and there have been plenty of times where I've tried to turn on or off the phone and been change the volume mid-press, which is really very annoying, and I wish that wasn't quite the case. Otherwise, I don't like that there's only one speaker and it's on the bottom. That isn't that nice either. And I think that's the main gripes that I have. As I said, fingerprint detection can be a little bit sort of hit or miss at times, but it is fairly quick. As I mentioned at the start, battery life for the device is brilliant. If I'm just working at home, then it's normally about 3 days of battery life. For me, again, with dash charging, it's also really quick to charge it up if I suddenly realize that I need to go out for a day for whatever reason, and I can fully charge it up pretty quickly. When I was out in Taipei, it was also fantastic. So there was a couple of days where it was like 12 hours of screen on time, like super heavy use, turning on GPS to find my current location, work out where I needed to go, walking to that bit, and then working out where I needed to go from there, kind of thing. Also constant messaging, also downloading press releases and obviously reading through them, loads of communications and just a whole lot of stuff that was going on, and it lasted the entire day. So I was really impressed with that. And if you're looking for a long-lasting phone that's pretty snappy and is overall just pretty fantastic, takes some great pictures, the audio quality, media consumption quality isn't the best, but overall is just a pretty fantastic phone, then I do highly recommend this one. The display is a 1920 by 1080 display, so not the highest resolution on the market, but the brightness is fantastic. It goes from almost unseeable to burning your retinas in a very small sort of slider, so really very impressive there. And you can actually just leave it in the adaptive mode and put it to where you generally want it, and it will adapt itself around that sort of position, and does a pretty good job of it as well, so really impressed there. At the time of filming in the UK, this currently ships in the 64GB model for £399, with the 128GB model, this one being £439. That's a pretty good value for money, especially when you compare to something like the Samsung Galaxy S8, which has relatively comparable specs, obviously a slightly newer phone, but relatively in the same ballpark, but obviously a couple £100 cheaper than that. So I'm really very impressed with the overall value for money proposition. Of course, it's still not quite in the budget phone category. It is still a flagship phone at a slightly more budget price to it, but again, don't compare this to, the Moto G, for example, which is actually a genuine budget phone, which happens to also have some pretty decent specs, but they're not necessarily directly comparable there. I should also make it clear that I purchased this with my own money to both do this review and also just replace my slightly broken Moto X Play. So this is slightly biased in that, of course, I bought it with my own money to use and want, in theory anyway, want it to be a decent phone that I can carry on using. So just bear that one in mind. Hopefully I've not been too light on the negatives, but there really isn't that many in my current experience with it. The main ones, as I mentioned, are the power button position right next to the volume rocker. I think the fact that there's no micro SD card slot isn't too much of a problem if you can afford the 128GB model, but if you can't, it'd be really nice to have that option available for upgrades later. And if you're trying to consume media on it, the single bottom facing speaker isn't the best. The overall sound quality is fairly decent, although there are plenty of other phones on the market that have better overall speaker setups. And overall, as I said, there's really great benefits and a few light trade-offs, so really it's just up to you whether you want to sort of pay that sort of money and if you're after this sort of phone with the trade-offs that I've mentioned. So when it comes to scoring for me, I think this is probably going to be a 4.5 for value for money, especially if you're comparing it to the high-end flagship Samsung and iPhones and stuff like that. Then this is a really very impressive value for money proposition, although of course it is still fairly expensive. When it comes to performance, it has to be a 5. The specs are amazing, and I think this is going to last quite a few years. And also the fact that in terms of functionality, I'm probably going to go for a 4.5 because of the main drawbacks to it, but especially with the camera quality, the screen being very brilliant for color accuracy, at least to the eye anyway, and brightness is brilliant. The cameras are great. The audio isn't that great, but does have a headphone jack, so that's always positive. And having Type-C is also a really useful thing, and dash charging. In terms of styling, it has to be a 5 here. I really love the look of it. It looks incredibly sexy to me. And I think in terms of TechteamGB score, it's going to be, I think, a 4.5 with a top tier award. It really is a fantastic phone. There's a couple of things that I would like to see different about it, but overall I am really impressed. It is a massive recommendation for me if you're after a phone in this sort of price range, especially with the specs that this thing has. And I love the regular software updates that are coming too. So yeah, I guess that's kind of that. If you want to check out the phone, I'll leave a link to OnePlus's website in the links in the description down below to check out the price, hopefully when and where you watch this. And of course, feel free to support me by checking out the Amazon and Overclockers UK affiliate links so that I can actually afford to buy this phone and not be, ridiculously poor. So if you can do that, that'd be fantastic. There's also a merch link in the description down below as well for TechteamGB and generally funny merch, so feel free to take a look at that. I'll leave some other videos on the screen for you, maybe some other phone reviews that I've done. If you'd like to see more of these, let me know in the comments down below, and maybe some manufacturers would be interested in checking those out too. And yeah, other than that, I think that's kind of it. As I said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you all in the next one.